Hey TCS TV viewers, it's Evelyn coming to you live from the camera store. This morning we have an in-person audience with us. Thanks everyone for joining us. Hopefully you've all had a nice cup of coffee, some donuts. But today we are going to be talking about street photography, and we are doing this hybrid event, and we have a guest joining us remotely over Zoom, and then we also have Joey. So we have Joey and Austin talking about street photography today. This is kind of an intro to telling you about what street photography is all about, different ways you can approach it, think about it, and give you some tips and tools so that you can enjoy this type of photography on your own. Now, I wanted to mention to all of you that are in person as well as joining from home that if you're someone that wants to get into street photography and you might feel like you don't have the right equipment, well, we are the camera store, but you might not know that we have a free try before you buy program. So with a lot of our brands, you can actually rent equipment for 3 days, no charge. We do take a deposit, but you can get an idea of different focal lengths to see if it's right for you. And so if you're local, definitely check that out. Go to camerastore.com under the rentals tab, and you can see all the details on how you can try some equipment for free. So that's kind of exciting. But I would like to introduce Joey to you. He's our in-store guest today, and then he'll tell you a little bit more about himself and our guest, Austin. Thanks,
awesome.
Guys.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for attending, both the folks in person as well as the folks online. My name is Joey, and this is... Yeah, hold on. Can we give Austin sound? Yeah, try saying something for me, Austin. I need to hear your beautiful voice.
Oh, hello.
All right, we hear you now. Okay, party on. Okay, so yeah, today we're going to be going through sort of an intro to street photography. Can you go to the next slide, Austin? it is not a masterclass. So neither of us are here to say this is the only way to do street photography. It is such a flexible medium, and it's something that I don't think anyone can say without a doubt that they are an expert on. So, we're just going to share some stories, some of our experience, and then, take some of it, don't take some of it, ask lots of questions, challenge us on things. That's really the point of today. Can we go to the next slide, Austin? All right, so I guess we should start off by introducing ourselves. Like I said, my name is Joey. My relationship with my camera started back in high school. One of my buddies had a YouTube channel, and he liked doing car reviews in the middle of winter. So I'd be out with my D7100 hiding in a snowbank, shooting a Toyota. So that was kind of how I got started, went to university, and then I said, man, my history degree does not really translate to a job instantly. So move to South Korea, right? That's what you do. You get your arts degree, you move to South Korea. So I moved there and was working as a teacher, and I went on a date with someone, and she said, hey, I've got this language exchange group. We should meet up, meet everyone. It turned out she was only using the dating app to recruit foreigners for this language exchange group. It's okay. Turned out he went on a date with the same person. So I meet up with this group, and we're in this kind of suburb of Seoul, so not a lot of foreigners in that community, right? So we met up, and he started using my camera a little bit. And we're like, man, this is fun. But he was a student. I was a teacher still at this point, teaching kindergarten. It just really, neither of us were kind of where we wanted to be. So fast forward a little bit, I come back to Seoul, and we both start working at a nonprofit for foreigners in Korea. So basically the company we worked at facilitated community relations between the foreign and Korean communities, so intercultural events, hosted events for the Korean Soccer Federation and so on. So we were running their YouTube channel, and of course with that, he learned cameras. I got to be in front of the camera, and we were on their YouTube channel for a better part of 2 years. And during this time, we got into street photography. We were shooting all the time, and since then, obviously, COVID happened, and I've been back, and now I work full-time in marketing. Austin, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey with your camera?
Yeah, I pretty much started because of you and stole your camera, took photos every day, and
a Nikon.
Got really into taking a Nikon, I know, but I switched to Sony, and then I switched to Canon. So, made the whole circle. But yeah, now I'm pretty much into taking candid street photography photos of people mostly. So got pretty into that, and now I just kind of do it as a hobby.
Awesome. Great. Let's go to the next slide, Mr. Austin. Okay, so the first thing I want to sort of canvas room, and this is just for folks in person, so if you're online, I apologize. I want to just kind of get an idea of who shoots with what. This isn't to start a tribal war between different camera factions, but instead is to kind of get people to share lenses. So when you're out shooting, this will be something we go into in a few slides. Having someone that shoots with the same system as you can be really beneficial, because then you don't have to bring every single thing you own, and you guys can swap lenses. So by show of hands, Sony. Okay, make a mental note if you shoot with Sony. All right, Nikon. Okay, there's my people. All right, Pentax. Okay, I didn't want to say anything, but okay. Olympus. No? Fuji. Whoa. Hey, there's some Fuji reps. Nice. And Canon. All right, cool. So when we're done the course, I would recommend just networking with folks from the same system. It can be a really great jumping off point for someone to do street with, because then you don't have to carry as much stuff. All right, next slide, Mr. Austin. Now that we started our tribal war. All right, so I think the first question we have to ask ourselves is, why would anyone do this? Why would you risk it for the biscuit, taking all your expensive gear out into an uncontrollable environment? Number one is availability. Put up your hand if you've tried to organize a shoot and the model or the person you were shooting with canceled. Yeah, a few people, right? Yeah, well, exactly, right? If you're just going out by yourself to shoot street photography, you're your own worst enemy, right? Your schedule matches when you're shooting. And change is one of the big things. You might take the same route to work every single day. It will never be the same. People change, weather changes, time of day, lighting, all of these things make it different. So pause for a second on your daily commute to work, take a photo. It doesn't have to be with a Hasselblad, it could just be with your cell phone. But take that moment to recognize that what's going on around you is fluid and is not ever going to be the same. And street photography, above all other forms of photography, in my humble opinion, pushes you to learn your camera, right? When you're in a studio, you can stop, you can look things up. I mean, depending on how much of a timeline you have. But when you're out shooting street, you have to be reactive to the situation. You have to adjust your camera on the fly, and you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. It's like when you go out golfing, right? You don't work on your swing once you're out golfing. You work on it at the range. So I like to kind of decide, okay, like aperture priority, maybe that's what I want to work on today, and then I will go out and only shoot in that setting. Fuji was actually really the camera that got me to learn the difference between shutter and aperture. Before, I'm embarrassed to say I didn't know the difference. But I bought a Fuji X-T20, I bought a bunch of old manual lenses, and I had to shoot everything pretty much in manual, and that really got me to learn my camera quickly. That was my journey. It might not be the same for you. I'm sure a lot of people in this room know a lot more about cameras than I do, but for me, that was kind of my foray into it. Austin, anything you want to add on why we should shoot street?
Yeah, I think to echo what you said, taking pictures just like going through your daily life is awesome. Some of my favorite photos are just like when I was waiting on the subway, and you see something cool. So that's definitely something you can do. You know, just take pictures whenever is convenient.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to the next slide, Mr. Austin. Okay, so this is another contentious topic. Zoom versus prime. This isn't just in general, I mean in terms of street photography. So I'm going to argue for Zoom, and Austin is going to be the supporter of prime. So why don't you kick us off, Austin, with why you might want to shoot prime for street photography?
For primes, it just makes it simpler. Like you can, you know, take photos with like the same focal length. So you don't have to really change up the perspective or the subject matter, because if you're taking like a 35 millimeter lens, then you can sort of frame everything the same. Whereas if you're constantly changing focal lengths, then your framing's going to change, your subject matter is probably going to change. So it creates a lot of extra variables that makes it a little harder to focus on creating a cool image, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, those are some good points. And also as well, I mean, you can make the argument zooms are not optically as good as primes. And I think the other thing as well is often zooms are bulkier than a prime lens. Now, unless you're shooting with the Noct, then it's different. But generally speaking, right, primes are a little bit smaller. I usually shoot with zooms just because I'm lazy. I don't like to change lenses all the time. And when I'm out shooting street, I mean, you have to be reactive to the situation, right? If you're wanting to get a subject shot of someone on a bicycle, that same bike isn't going to be there by the time you change lenses, right? So if you've got a very versatile zoom, you know, I'd say 35 to 200, that range, that's sort of where I like to live. 17 to 35 is my current zoom lens. It weighs a metric ton, so I don't really use it a lot for street unless I'm doing architecture. But yeah, if you've got anything 35 and up from there, I think you're pretty safe if you're going to go with zoom. And again, if you're shooting with a crop sensor camera, obviously everything's even smaller, but full frame anyways, I typically find, the zooms are heavier, but you do get some benefits, and you can kind of adjust the lens to, you know, what's going on around you. Next slide, Mr. Austin, please. Okay, so energy and passion. So these are sort of four things that I keep in mind to have success when I'm going out. Number one, shoot what you enjoy. If you like taking pictures of buildings, take pictures of buildings. If you like taking pictures of people, do that. Don't pigeonhole yourself into one area and just say, okay, so-and-so on YouTube took a photo of this train. I guess I need to do that. Don't let social media and what people are doing online dictate the way you shoot. Shoot what you love. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. There's a lot of critics online. We all know that. Online forums can turn into a bloodbath sometimes when you post your content. You get it. For me, I just don't care, right? I get lots of negative comments on my YouTube channel every day. People saying, oh, why does he have so much energy? Why is he crazy? Well, that's who I am, right? You don't like it, go to another channel. Next thing is be comfortable. Don't wear high heels. Don't wear platform shoes. Don't wear, a floral shirt like Austin if it's cold outside, right? You need to be in a comfy space to take good photos, because if you're uncomfortable, your photos aren't going to look good. And also, if you're doing street, people around you are going to be uncomfortable. If I was up here and I was really scared and nervous, you guys would be scared and nervous as a crowd, right? It's the same thing. Whatever you put out into the world comes back to you, and it's the same thing for photography. And be realistic. I have gained a little bit of weight since I did a lot of street photography. I don't think I could go 20 kilometers walking right now comfortably and get photos. Could I walk 20 kilometers? For sure. But with my fitness level, I don't think I'm at a point right now where I could take a lot of gear and walk that distance. So when it comes to planning, you know, think about your fitness level and think about what you can do safely. You know, it's good to push yourself, but don't push yourself too far. And be bold. Just take the photo. Don't hesitate, right? If you're thinking, maybe I should take it or not, that instinct right away tells me you need to take that photo, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. It might be blurry. It might not be perfect. Who cares? Get the shot, because otherwise you're going to regret it. And the golden rule is just get out and shoot. I think a lot of us in this room, myself included, I watch a lot of YouTube videos on street photography all over the world. I'm like, oh man, Tokyo, I want to go there, or Brazil. You know, there's so many great spots. Calgary is awesome. If you're not in Calgary, your home is awesome. You don't need to leave to go do that, right? You can shoot anywhere. Anything you want to add, Austin, to energy and passion?
No, get out there.
Yeah, get out there and have fun. Exactly. All right, next slide, Mr. Austin. All right, safety. This is something that's a tricky subject, right? And it's very much relative to where you are in the world. When I used to shoot in South Korea, I could be out till 2 in the morning by myself and not have a single issue. And I'd have a tripod with me, the whole 9 yards. No problem. Here in Calgary, I don't treat Calgary the same way I treat Seoul. It also changed my relationship with my camera. I went from shooting street like Austin does to shooting Cityscape for obvious reasons, right? So think about the time of day. Don't go out in the middle of the night. So Austin maybe can speak a bit more to Korea, but I'll talk a little bit more about Calgary just because that's kind of my space now. Time of day, I will not go out by myself after the sun's gone down. I just won't do it, even if I'm just carrying my Sony ZV-1. It's not worth it. You're a target. Remember, you're carrying lots of expensive gear and people are going to come up to you. It's something to be prepared for. Prior knowledge of the area, right? Know your city, know where you're going. If you're a tourist somewhere, you don't always have that luxury, but do some research before you go. See what different areas are known for. Look for the bad in everything and be prepared for the worst, right? It's not about fear mongering and think, oh man, I shouldn't go out and shoot, but you know, just mentally prepare yourself for the different cultural experiences you're going to have and also the different social, economic breakdowns of different areas, right? Because especially when you're coming as a tourist, you're already labeled a target anyways, right? Because you stick out like a sore thumb. I know I do. And the buddy system. Always when you can, shoot with a friend. This is why at the start of the class, I was wanting you guys to talk about shooting with the same systems, because that's someone that you can share lenses with and you can travel with together, right? Shoot with friends. It doesn't have to always be someone that's super into photography. Austin wasn't into photography when we started hanging out. I'm the one that got him into it. Our buddy Pete, same thing. Then the three of us, it kind of changed the way we went out. We went out from, you know, just going out for beers after work to going out having beers and doing photography, right? We added that layer of complexity onto it, but it was a lot of fun and we kept each other safe. We had each other's back. If I wanted to do a long exposure, he'd be watching my backpack, same vice versa, right? So build that community because it will keep you safe. And yes, I shoot at night in Calgary, yep.
You mentioned, for obvious reasons, you're kind of moving more to Cityscape. So we had a couple of questions in here, or comments about how shooting street photography of people in North America is more problematic than maybe other foreign countries. Can you mention like what some of those like obvious things are as to why you prefer shooting cityscapes?
That's a good question. I've had a few instances in Calgary where I've been pointing my camera at a building doing architecture, and I've had people get angry at me for taking their photo even though they weren't even in the frame. I think the best one I had happen was probably about 2 months ago. I was down on Center Street taking a picture of the Calgary Tower, partway up the bridge, and there was a guy behind me. My camera is clearly pointed the opposite direction. I took a photo of the building. He said, hey, give me that, and he started chasing me. He thought I took his photo, right? Different people react different ways. It's not like when you go to another country, it's automatically okay to take photos of people. Consent is a big thing. If you can talk to that person before you take that photo, that's always preferable. That's what I try to do as much as I can. Calgary, if I was to take a photo of someone, that's something I would do prior to taking the photo. Austin shoots a different style. We'll get into that in a little bit. But for myself, I'm not comfortable just taking photos of people. Some people are, some people aren't. Know yourself. and know what you're comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable taking photos of strangers, don't do that, because if you're not comfortable, they're not comfortable, it creates a problem, generally speaking. Any other questions or good? Okay, awesome. And yeah, give yourself a gear allowance. Don't wear every single thing you have and a nomadic backpack with like a whole cinema rig in the back. Be realistic about, number one, how much you can handle safely, and number two, how much of a target you're going to be, right? If I'm going out later at night, one camera body, one lens, I'm not going to bring my tripod usually if it's by myself. If I'm shooting with a friend, maybe my tripod, maybe a secondary lens. That's it. I don't bring extra camera bodies. I might bring my drone sometimes because it's really small. If you guys have questions about droning, we can get into that at the end. But just, golden rule for this one is be aware, be proactive, know what's going on around you, right? Sometimes as photographers, we get so zoomed in on our camera, we completely lose what's going on around us and lose track, and that's when bad things happen, right? So again, not trying to put fear into your minds, but just this is something you need to be realistic about, and it is a real piece of street photography, for better or for worse. Anything you want to add, Austin?
Yeah, just also know the laws of where you live. In Korea, technically it's not illegal, but a lot of people think it's illegal. And I've had to deal with someone calling the cops on me before, and knowing that it's not illegal, helps me, because I know that I didn't do anything wrong. So, even if something like that happens, I don't want to scare everyone, but it was okay in the end, right? So just depending on what country you're in. I know in Europe, you can't take pictures of someone in their home, if their face or body or whatever comes out through a window, that's technically illegal. So just knowing the laws where you live will definitely help as well, at least comfort you and give you the confidence to do what you want to do. So I definitely recommend that as well.
Not that we're condoning taking photos of people in their homes, just to be clear.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, definitely Austin makes a good point, right? Know the rules, know the laws. They'll protect you, and they'll also give you a bit more confidence while you're out shooting, right? If Austin saying in Europe, I'm not familiar with European laws, but let's say I was just totally not allowed to take photos of people, period. Europe's got many countries, but let's say in Switzerland, for instance, maybe it's not allowed. I wouldn't do it. Right? So yeah, know your rules, know your laws. Next slide, Mr. Austin, please. Okay, gear. Yeah, don't bring everything. Costanza did it. Don't be the Costanza in your photography group. Think about the following. Yes, yeah, you got some Seinfeld fans here. Subject matter. Think about what you're shooting, right? If I'm shooting macro, I'm not going to bring a wide angle lens. If I'm shooting architecture, I'm going to bring a wide angle, not a telephoto, right? So think about, if you've planned to shoot out well, what sort of lenses you're going to need, and don't think about, oh, but what if? If you think what if, every single thing goes in your bag. That's what happens every time I travel. And think about the weather, right? My little ZV-1 isn't as weatherproof as my Nikon Z6, right? So if it's raining, the ZV-1 stays home, I bring the Z6, right? It's really dependent on that. And travel distance, I think Austin remembers this one. We were going hiking up this small mountain in Seoul called Gwanaksan, and I was like, man, at the top, I'm gonna fly my drone, I'm gonna use my gimbal on the way up with my D7100 on it, and then at the top, I'll shoot a YouTube, I had this whole thing, but I was already not in the best shape at this stage, and I got about halfway up the mountain with this 80-pound backpack, and I had to turn around and go back. So I missed 100% of the shots. I popped the drone up really quickly, got it to the top, got some photos, brought it down. These guys were like, this is why we said don't bring everything. And they were totally right. And I think just, yeah, keep that in mind. Don't bring everything. For me, I like to carry my Peak Design. I don't work for Peak Design. This is not a promotion. I love this bag. It's open concept. It's not too big. It holds about as much gear as I can comfortably carry without it hurting my neck. Right? That's another thing to keep in mind, is heavy gear weighs down on your body, especially when you're shooting. And then, yeah, if you've got a B shooter, you've got increased capacity, right? If that B shooter is also bringing other stuff, not so much. But if you guys plan out your gear well, you have the same system. Sharing lenses can be a great way to cut back on the amount of stuff you have to carry. Austin, anything you want to add to gear?
Best camera's the camera you have, so.
100%. 100%. And another way you guys can share lenses is if you get into vintage lenses and you guys all have M42s, bring your M42 lenses. M42 lenses are small, they're great, they screw on, they never really break. So, you know, even if you've got a friend that shoots with a different system, but you guys are both into old vintage lenses, that's a way you can kind of start sharing, right? All right, next slide, Mr. Austin. All right, route planning. This one's Austin.
Okay. Yeah, so if you want to be like really deliberate with your street photography, you can do the route planning. Of course, you could just, you know, figure it out as you go. But if you're someone who wants to like, you know, get that perfect shot, then definitely take these into consideration. So, you know, there's different times of day that you can shoot, like golden hour, blue hour, or the sunrise, or even like nighttime. And so you're only going to have maybe like an hour to an hour and a half of light, depending on what you choose. So keep that in mind when you are traveling to the place you want to go to. I've never been to Calgary, but there's probably like some routes within the city where there's probably some areas in the city where you'll get light at golden hour, but you won't get light at the sunrise, and vice versa. So it's good to make note of like different points of interest. Like I'm assuming there's like a Calgary Tower.
Yeah.
Or something.
It's a landmark,
Yeah.
Austin. Global fame.
Okay. Great. So you could base your route off of like the Calgary Tower or some like unique areas around there. And one thing I like to do as well is test shots at different times of day, or if I'm out and I see something interesting, then I can test a shot and then come back when there's better light. Or as Joey might know this well, but sometimes you want to fly a drone and get like a sunset shot, but then it rains and you can't get the shot.
Every time.
So making sure that you get the right lighting conditions, you might have to do it a couple times as well. So golden rule: don't go everywhere. You can go everywhere, but just, you know, stick to one place for that 1 hour, because sometimes if you're just chasing like the light, then you might miss some shots that you would have been able to get. Anything else?
Yeah, well, I think, the don't go everywhere thing. I think a good example of a time that him and I met up was about a year ago. We were in Wyoming, as one does in October. And we thought, man, we've only got 2 days. How much of Wyoming can we do? We did the entire outside of Wyoming, because all the great stuff in Wyoming, for the most part, is at the edges. It was fun, but we were pretty burnt out. And there's a lot of spots. Looking back at the photos and video I captured, I was like, man, like that small town, we should have spent like a day there, right? So I think, depending on your time constraints, right, budget as well is another thing to keep in mind. Sometimes you might not get a chance to go back somewhere. So in those cases, hit everything, get as much as you can, because you might not be going back anytime soon. But if you live somewhere and you have the opportunity to just kind of pick and choose certain areas, that's always something that's preferable, at least for myself. Next slide.
Cool. All right, confidence and attitude. So like Joey was saying, being comfortable in your own skin and being comfortable with taking someone else's picture is pretty important if you're going to take someone else's picture. I'll primarily be talking about that because I think that's probably the most important area where confidence comes into play. But first of all, don't like hide. Don't try to like take a sneaky picture, because people know what's going on. You're not really being sneaky. So also the biggest thing is you want to be like flowing with the rest of other people. So maybe sometimes as photographers we think that we are, you know, trying to do something special, but you should just try to blend in with everyone else. You know, don't try to make it special or interesting. Just try to be as inconspicuous as possible. So just like someone who's, you know, taking a picture on their phone of like something cool, that's what you should do. Just walk by, take a quick picture, and then you know, go about your business. You don't want to be spending too much time or too much effort on a certain picture. So if you go up to someone and you just take their picture real fast and then run, or not run, but keep going.
We've all been there.
You know, they usually won't notice. But if they do notice, then you can, you know, give them a nod or, you know, make eye contact. And actually letting them know that you're going to take a picture is a lot better than not letting them know. So yeah, that's pretty much the golden rule. It's like, make sure that you're communicating that you belong. You're doing something that's kind of weird, taking someone else's picture. So just make sure you let them know, and you shouldn't have any problems.
Yeah, the only thing I would add on to that is maybe don't use a lens the size of a bat. I've had that happen. We were shooting one evening actually, and Austin was shooting, I think, with a 28. No, he was shooting 35. He was shooting 35 film, and we were out, I think it was in Hongdae, and he was just shooting close to people. And I was really nervous, so I had my Fuji set up with this, like, I think it was like a 135, like old Tamron like prime lens, and it was like a 3.5. It wasn't very good. It was cheap, but I was like really nervous, and the guy was probably only, you know, this far away from that cabinet, so probably about 10 feet away, and I nervously took a photo of him, and then he got mad at me. But then Austin took a photo of the same guy, but was just like, hey man, click, no problem, right? So being nervous, feeling like you don't belong, will always create a worse situation than if you just own it, right? And that's the other thing to keep in mind as well. People are taking photos with their phones all the time. What's the difference, really? Like, you know, I was up shooting in Lake Louise last year, and I was just doing a YouTube bit for myself, just right at the edge of the water there. And I don't get paid to do my photography. Like, I don't get paid to have a YouTube channel. I just do it for fun. And this influencer took a video of me, posted online, and was like, you didn't get a park pass, blah, blah, blah. And then I looked at her story, and she was selling a bunch of merch with her phone, right? So just remember that just because you have a camera doesn't make you separate from everyone else. You're part of that group. You're not separate. You know, we're all just people with cameras at the end of the day.
100%.
100%. All right, checklist. Do you want to kick this
So
one off?
checklist. Yeah, so it is important to like make sure you have everything you need, especially if you're like a film shooter like me. You want to have enough film, but of course, like having a charger for your digital camera or having extra SD cards. There's nothing worse than getting to location and not having an SD card. So make sure you go through that before you leave. And I'll let Joey take it from here.
Yeah, well, and I think when we get to our galleries as well, we'll kind of talk about like why we shoot a certain way. So like I'm digital, he's more film, so I'll talk more to digital. He can speak a bit more to why you might want to shoot film. I think the big thing is making sure you've got a good system of organization, right? So for this bag, I've got a little pouch at the top that holds all of my SD cards. I've got a laptop sleeve where I can keep my iPad for mobile editing because I've got a Pro. And then if I'm just carrying one camera, one lens, I'll just keep the whole bag open there because then I can see everything. But if I'm bringing my drone with me, then I put a partition in so I can put the drone on one side, camera on the other, right? When you're in a rush, you can be very quick to throw something over here or move something here. I'm just gonna set it here for 1 second. That's gone. Immediately assume that that piece of gear is going to walk away or you're gonna forget it. Because a lot of the time when you're in street especially, something will come up, boom, oh, I need to go over here and get that photo. You're gonna forget. Pause for a second, make a note, put the gear away, because if you don't, there's a very good chance you're gonna lose that gear altogether. And if you open up your pocket guide, there's a section on that subject. So, and for those watching online, there will be a link in the bio to our course. There's a free download on there if you guys would like to get access to this little pocketable guide on some of the tips and tricks that we're sharing today. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for checklist. Anything else you want to add, Austin?
Nope, sounds good.
All right, moving on. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Cityscape, why I shoot it. We're just going to go through some of the photos that I've taken over the last few years and kind of tell you a little bit about the settings I used on these photos and why I made some of the choices I made. So, I mean, the first four things I think about are here. First one is lighting, right? Light can really hit buildings different ways depending on the time of year. Especially here in Canada, we get a very low sun in the winter, right? So that's something I really factor in when I'm going out to shoot certain buildings. And also remembering, like Austin said, depending on the time of the day, that building might be lit or not. If it's sunrise, some buildings don't get it. You know what I'm saying, sunset, not so much. Framing, think about what you want to actually show people. Because if you try to show them everything, often they'll see nothing. Right? So think about what the center of your frame is. This can be hard when you're shooting street cityscape because usually you're just kind of out shooting. It's not necessarily something you've extremely planned out, right? So pause for a second and think, okay, in this frame, what am I trying to draw people into? What am I trying to show? And then, yeah, static and moving foreground. Personally, I like to shoot most things without any movement. I really just like to capture no people, just the building. That's my preference. It's not gonna be the same for everyone. Sometimes there is a moving foreground, right? And then in those instances, I will always shoot manual, turn on my focus peaking, so that way then I can really make sure that that building behind, that's the one thing I want in focus will be. Because I mean, at least for my Z6, the autofocus, not great. It works, it's not great. In those instances, I find that my camera will try to hunt to the closest thing, and then I lose the shot. So sometimes just shooting in manual, turning on your focus peaking, that can get you the result you're looking for. And then, yeah, considering tight versus wide, right? Do I want to kind of show the epicness of how big the city is, or do I want to just show a very specific part? You know, these are all things to keep in mind. These two photos of the King Eddie, I shot with a prime lens, actually. I shot this with the 50mm 1.4 G lens on my Z6 adapted. I like that lens just because it goes down to 1.4. So if I'm shooting low light, then I can open it nice and wide, and I can lower my ISO. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so there's a couple different photos here. So the first one here on the left side of the St. Louis. Honestly, I wanted to share this one because I kind of missed. I tried getting as many angles on this sign as I could. This tree was just there. The city hasn't come through to prune it yet, I guess. So when I was taking that photo, I just said, you know what? I still think it's kind of cool. Maybe it kind of has a nature-ish hybrid vibe going, so that's why I framed it that way. I finally just said, all right, can't get the shot without the tree. Use the tree. This is the best side. Same thing, 51.4. Strip joint. This is a chicken spot just close to the drop-in center here in Calgary. This was one I did really quick. That area, sometimes you don't want to be over there with the camera, so just get it quick, move on. I think my shutter speed on that was 1/150, and ISO was probably around 2000. And I shot it wide open, 1.4. Obviously, if you're trying to get multiple things in focus, shooting wide open isn't always the best call, but for this, because it was kind of a flat surface, I knew I could get that all sharp. And then this was the same spot, actually, the exact same spot. I literally just turned around and I was able to get that shot too. So sometimes when you're walking over to get a photo, remember that there are other photos you can get around you. You don't need to just get that one, right? Take advantage of the moment. And once you've gotten that frame, pause for a second and look and see, oh, maybe this could be nice. Maybe this could be nice, right? There's things that we don't consider sometimes when we're just so determined to get that one shot. Because the only reason I went over there was to get that picture of that strip joint sign. That was it. All right, next slide, Mr. Austin. Okay, so this is my bee shooter that I usually shoot with. His name is Marcus. We were out in Chinatown shooting the last video of our course. Check it out at the end if you're interested. And I was just like, man, this lighting from the Silver Dragon restaurant is so cool. I love it. And the reflection I got here was on one of those electrical boxes, right? So that was me thinking, okay, I don't have a reflector with me. There's no water on the ground. It's not raining. How can I create something in the foreground to kind of reflect what's in the background? So I literally just set my camera down on there, snapped the photo, that was it, right? So try to use what's around you. Sometimes you'll see things, different framing. You'll have opportunities that people don't always take advantage of. You know, when people travel to a place for the first time, it's just, I'm just gonna get a photo of the Golden Gate Bridge because it's beautiful. But if you live somewhere, then that's where you start thinking, okay, how can I use what's around me? How can I make this photo that I've seen a million times a little bit different? And then I thought to myself, man, I want to take some photos of him, even though he really doesn't want to be photographed. Let's go over there and use the harshest light known to man. So same thing, shot with my 50mm for both of these shots. This one was 100% wide open. I just love the look of the 1.4 lens. with the background you can get. I shot this in auto, like for focus, for both of them, and yeah, I like how they turned out. They were fun photos to get. Next slide, Mr. Austin. Okay, this one, I was doing a collaboration video with Gin Bar. They're a local Korean restaurant over in Bridgeland, and I was posted up with my camera getting some video shots, and I was just like, man, I just love how cool the scene was, because it was kind of a snowy day, so all the light was very blue. So I posted up there with my 70-200. This was at, I want to say 150, on a tripod, of course, and then I shot for about a 6-second exposure. ISO was set down to right around 100, bare minimum, and on Nikons you can actually go a little bit lower than that, so if you want to push it lower than 100 you can. And yeah, it was a fun shot. It was just like one of those moments where I was like, man, like, I don't want to just get video, because this is actually what the video looked like too, because I was doing a time lapse, right, to try to get the traffic. I just wanted to get a still of that while I was there. Next photo. This one is of the, I forget, bow building and the big head in the front there. I set up there with the 35mm 1.8 Z-mount lens. Same thing, long exposure, set on. I actually didn't have a tripod with me here. I used a bench. So I set my camera down. I set my exposure to about 15 seconds, or sorry, my shutter to 15 seconds. I stopped it down to, I think, F16 or F20, somewhere in there. And then I set a timer so I could set my camera down, frame it, and then walk away. Then you don't get that delay, like that shutter jiggle if you press it and hold it for the exposure. Sometimes you're not going to have a tripod with you. Doesn't mean you can't do a long exposure. Again, use what's around you. It might not be the perfect angle, right? Because I think this one, in hindsight, I would have liked to have maybe gotten a little higher off the ground to get the head a bit more centered. But I still got the shot, right? So use what's around you. Just because you don't have all your gear with you doesn't mean you can't capture an image. Next slide. So these ones I just took a couple days ago, actually. Can anyone guess what camera I used? Not a Nikon. ZV-1. I used the Sony ZV-1 to get these. Little pocketable camera. The best camera, to Austin's point, is the one you have in your pocket. For me, that little camera, I can take that around with me all the time. I wear a little hip belt. I mean, menu system, not great. There's a few things I'm not a huge fan of on the camera, but it's better than my cell phone, and I love how accessible it is, and I can just pull it out whenever I want. So these ones, it was raining a bit. I found that for weatherproofing on it wasn't too bad. There weren't any issues. Big thing with Sony's, I found our buddy shoots with an A7 III. He took the little plastic thing off the cold shoe, and it got rained on a little bit, stopped working. So some cameras actually, if they get rained on and you don't have a good cover on that, they will cease to work. So I definitely had a cover on mine while I was shooting. But yeah, next slide. This one, same thing. I was just out. I was getting on that train, and in that moment, I was just like, man, like this is cool. And this is the type of photo of people that I'm comfortable taking. They're not looking at me. That could be anyone, right? So in that moment, I felt like, okay, this is cool. Yeah, is it a little grainy? 100%. The ZV-1 is definitely stronger during the daytime, but it's still the best camera in my pocket at that moment. So I'm still just going to get the photo. Shot this one in full auto. No extra settings. And that's the other thing as well. Sometimes rocking auto isn't actually the worst thing. If you're new to street photography and you're thinking, oh God, like do I use aperture priority? Do I shoot manual? What should I do? By the time you make that decision, that moment might be gone. So suck it up, put it into auto. It's okay. It's okay to shoot in auto. It's not the worst thing in the world. So sometimes you just need to do that. Next slide. This one, I was just walking home. So this is just around the corner here. I do this commute every single day, and same thing. I really liked how eerie it was outside this week, because fall's coming to an end. We have 2 seasons in Canada, snow and less snow, but we actually got fall this year, so we got a third. It's a benefit. So it's funny. I was actually in California about a week ago, and I kept seeing all of these bangers people were getting with their drones and all sorts of stuff of fall in Calgary. And I was like, man, this is like the best fall in Calgary in years, and I'm in California. It's poor me, right? But came back, and then it was dreary like this the entire time. But then I thought to myself, man, that's okay. Who cares? Get out, get some photos. They're not going to be the same as everyone else's. But why did I have that momentary desire to be like everyone else? That was social media getting to me and me thinking I need to be a part of that. Who cares? Shoot what you want, right? Just get out and do it. And you know, the weather doesn't have to be great. This was at 8 in the morning. I was out, so why not take advantage of that? Next slide. All right, so now we're going to go into street photography. These first two were ones I took. Austin will speak to street photography just a bit more, but same thing. Good examples of photos I'm comfortable taking of people when I'm overseas. This one on the side, he's just on his phone. He doesn't care. The guy with the bike, he's walking away from me. For me, that's my comfort level with people. I love talking to people, right? I love making my YouTube content and doing that, but for me, taking photos of people, unless I'm being paid by someone, it's not something that I'm super passionate about or that I really enjoy, right? Cityscape is kind of where I lean into it a bit more. And actually, can you go back one slide there, Austin? The other thing as well that I wish I had with me in these shots was my drone. Does anyone here fly drones? Anyone? Yeah, we got a few pilots, nice. I think we will do a class eventually on droning, specifically on like how to do it legally. But just in a nutshell, best drone you can get, in my opinion, is the Mini 3 Pro because you can fly it basically anywhere, right? But make sure you know your laws, make sure you know your rules. Downtown Calgary, technically you can fly a micro drone. It's not allowed, right? As drone users, you have to operate in this kind of gray space. National parks, things like that, doesn't matter the size of the drone, but if you got a sub 250 in your downtown Calgary, you can do a bit of flying. You just need to be really aware of what's going on around you and be aware that there's a lot of helicopters, right? So if you see a helicopter, bring your drone back. If you see them flying around during rush hour, just don't fly your drone, right? It's all about time of day and making sure that you're doing it safely and don't fly it over people. And also be aware that sometimes there's no TAMs, right? So when the stampede's on, there's no TAM there. So it doesn't matter what size your drone is, you can't fly it over thousands of people, right? And in general, don't fly your drone over people. It's just, you're asking for people to have a problem with it and you're asking for a mistake to happen, right? So for me, I usually just fly it straight up from where I'm standing, get a photo, bring it right back down. And I always stay under the flight height limit of like, I think it's 200 meters, 150, somewhere in there. So just something to keep in mind. Anyways, sorry, I'm done, Austin. Let's go on to your street photography slides.
Okay. So, yeah, both of these photos are shot on Kodak Vision 3, which is like a movie stock. So it requires like a different process, but I won't get into like film. But yeah, I just like taking photos of people's faces. This is actually shot quite far away and then zoomed in, so it wasn't too hard to take. You just, go up and take it, I suppose. They were, in middle of a conversation, so it's kind of cool to like capture them in that. And that, of course, they're not going to mind if they're having a good time, right? So sure, of someone who's having a bad time, because that's, they're going to interpret that differently from someone who's having a great time. On the right, we have this man who I said hi to and asked if I could take his picture, and he was like, yeah, sure. So yeah, pretty easy to do that. You'd be surprised at what people say if you just like, hey, is it okay if I take your picture? Go try it out and see what happens. If you see someone who looks cool or has got a cool outfit, you can even like give them a compliment, and it can make their day in a lot of cases. So yeah, definitely try that out.
Before you advance, Austin, another thing to keep in mind though as well is between these two, like just how different the moment is that you're capturing, right? Some street photographers, they just want that natural moment and that's all they're going for, right? For Austin, and I think myself as well, it was usually a variety while we were out shooting. So that's the other thing you want to keep in mind as well is what is sort of the look you're going after, what's the actual moment you're trying to show. If you're happy to get both, then do both. But it's just something to keep in mind is the moment you're capturing couldn't be more different, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, like right here is a lot more of a candid example. And you can see the guys like looking straight into the camera as well. That's usually what a lot of like candid photographers are looking for, is some person to like look straight into the camera but not be too aware of them, like not posing for the camera. So this one was taken pretty close, maybe like, you know, 6 to 10 feet away. And he actually, right after this picture was taken, he was like, "Hey, what's up?" You know, very positive response. So, you know, some people are definitely like very receptive to you taking their picture. But I just thought it was interesting having them kind of alone in this like old, old style bar. Uh, Basically, they have these like bars underground um, near like an old apartment complex. So it's kind of interesting. And then on the right, we have you know, two older women just chilling outside, enjoying the heat. So thought I'd capture that. But yeah, you know, it's pretty easy to, you know, go up and take pictures of people, and they're generally pretty happy about it, I found. Um, Pretty much similar situation here. These guys actually also, you know, gave me like a bunch of thumbs up after I took their picture. What you don't see is on the back side of that flag, there's an American flag. So they're sort of supporting the American South Korean alliance there. And then on the right, we have sort of a more like cityscape style photo, which is shot during blue hour. But you can see all the people there as well. So kind of like how Joey was shooting, you can be far away and also have lots of human elements as well.
On that blue hour photo, Austin, this is
Yeah.
actually a question I was wondering, because whenever I shoot film, it never turns out. Like I've tried it a whole bunch of times, and it never works out for me. What shutter speed do you use on that? Because like whenever I shoot film, like it's always really grainy, and like this is a really clean image considering you did it on film.
This one is actually on digital.
Oh, okay, that's why. Okay.
Do you want me to talk about? Do you want me to talk about films or?
Would you guys be interested in talking a little bit about film? Yeah, let's talk a little bit about film.
Okay, sure. So yeah, most of these other ones are shot on film, like, and for the exposure, like, to get like, especially the one on the right, that's like pretty clean. You want to stop down the lens to like f2.8 or f4, and you need to be like really steady with the camera and because there's no like IBIS, right? And you want to be like 1/50 or 1/125. They don't really have a lot of selection with any faster than 1/125. So like 1/250 is just like too fast. So you want to keep it on the overexposed side because it's a lot harder to recover detail with film. It's a lot easier to like pull it out of highlights. So if you're ever going to try film, definitely do that. And for nighttime especially, you want to be like 1/30 or 1/60, no matter what focal length you have, and just try to be as steady as possible. So.
And you get these done as scans, right?
Yeah. And then the scanning, of course, you know, find a lab that you like. In America, I've used the dark room before, and they've been pretty good. But there's also like local labs that you can always check out, and you can always scan it yourself. You can always just get the film developed, and or you can try traditional like scanner. But I haven't really explored scanning myself. These are taken on digital camera. First one was on actually both of them are on 50 milliliters or millimeters. I don't know why I keep thinking it's a drink.
It's all good. I mean, it's a cool drink to use a cool 50.
Yeah, it's a small drink. But I really like the second image. She was like cleaning her face with like water from the Han River, which is actually quite dirty. But yeah, I kept going closer and closer behind her until I got the sun like directly behind her head. So, and she knew I was there as well. So maybe, yeah, just like making sure that they know what you're doing makes it a whole lot more comfortable for both both of you guys, because it might be weird if you're like going up to someone behind them taking their picture. So definitely gauge like the environment. But I just thought it was nice having the sun and her kind of looking like she's praying almost. So I like that image.
Yeah, we just have one question here for you, Austin.
On that last page,
Yeah.
the cityscape photo, is there a diffusion filter on the lens?
Can you go back one slide, Austin?
Yeah.
The one on the right? Yeah, she's wondering if there was a diffusion filter on the lens on that one.
On the lens? So kind of. I typically, my lens is a little oily because I like my fingers, like I touch the lens and like it gets smeared around. So in a way, yeah, there's like a diffusion filter on there.
The human version of a filter.
For really quick vintage look, you can just, you know, smear your fingers on the lens. So
We mostly used to shoot a lot of old vintage lenses, so there's sort of like, oh, obviously there's some beautiful pieces of glass you'll pay a lot of money for, but most of the lenses we got were like $20. So yeah, it's like, okay, that's fine. Yeah. Just quickly clean it with my nail.
And one thing I noticed about Joey's images too is that if there's like fog in the air, it'll disperse the light on right after it rains, or like before it rains. You can sometimes get that effect, so
Yeah.
you can keep that in mind as well.
I kept going out to get sunrise and sunset photos my last week there, and it rained every time. So I got lucky. I was able to get some cool shots, but they weren't the ones I wanted.
There you go. So this is sort of more the grainy, get a proper exposure with the film. Shot it like near nighttime, so it can be hard with, you know, the really dark shadows. But this was quite close as well, maybe like 6 to 10 feet behind them. So, but they didn't even turn around. Like, as long as you're, you know, going up and being confident about shooting, then nothing bad's gonna happen. And then on the right, it's sort of like what Joey was describing with the red light from like a Chinese restaurant. You know, it's just really cool. And I typically go a little closer. So I just thought capturing someone going in and also inside was cool. So I just like how the framing of the window, you know, frames both the man entering and the woman in the seat. So
And one of the
I
cool
also
things-
wanted, like,
Go ahead, Austin, sorry.
oh, I guess there's one more thing I could talk about with photos. It's just like having one dominant color is something that I like. But if you're good at like mixing colors in, then there's, you know, you can also do that.
Yeah, and all I was going to say, Austin, is just one of the neat things about Seoul specifically compared to anywhere else I've been in the world is just how unique every block is. It's a relatively new city in terms of the building that's happened since the Korean War. And as such, there was a huge push, right? So there's not really like sort of like a unified vision of what Seoul should look like. So any block you go, you'll have such a wide variety of architecture and shops. And like, you don't really have to go too far to get some pretty neat moments. And, you know, I lived there for the better part of 3 years, and the neighborhood I lived in Gangnam, I'd go out sometimes just to shoot there every night because it was so different and things were changing all the time. Like, I remember one time, it was Christmas time, and this giant truck went by with, it was like a freight truck, and it had this big flatbed in the back. It was probably about a 60-foot platform, and there was this huge choir singing on it. It just went hurtling down the highway, and I was just like, okay, I'm never going to see that again. The photo sucked because I used my cell phone, but I tried.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because these two photos were taken like, you know, only a couple hundred meters between each other, and they're very different.
Yeah.
Also, these two photos are taken very near each other. But the first one, I guess I'd like to mention that it was snowing, and I just grabbed a camera and real fast and then took that picture. So sometimes you got to take advantage of the weather because it stopped snowing. It only snowed heavy like this for like 5 to 10 minutes. So just always have a camera on you if you can. But if you can't, just get whatever you can. But the second image I like because the bike has got the smallest wheels in the world, and he's also got an umbrella, so it's kind of interesting. But besides that, this whole like market used to be here, and it's actually completely been erased. Korea loves to like, I guess, improve like older parts of their culture, and this building is quite old, so it's no longer there, which is kind of interesting.
Well, and it's also kind of sad, we went to this one older community while we were there, and it was pretty much abandoned because the whole area was being developed. And it was like we stepped back in time, like it was such a moment in time. And, cities all across the world have these large gentrification projects where they'll try to completely change an area. And, obviously there's good reasoning sometimes behind it, but sometimes we're really losing some really neat history and some really cool scenes that, if you go to Havana now, for instance, like you can still get old cars and get those moments in time. And, there's still a lot of spaces like this left in Seoul, but they are year by year fading away. So, if you guys are wanting to get out and shoot in Korea and get
100%.
Yeah, get these. I mean, next 20 years, most of this will be changed, I think. So it would be worth doing it in the not so distant future.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting point too with finding your voice with like street photography. I think at the start you're not going to know what to shoot, and as you shoot more and more, eventually you'll find something that you like, and even adding some narrative into your work and some story that you want to express is just going to give your photos that much more depth. So definitely for me, I found that to be powerful and more meaningful for my own photography, is I can go out and I have some story I want to tell. So if you ever have something like that, that's going to definitely motivate you to get out there and take meaningful pictures. So here is also a traditional market, and these are all shot on film, but same story with the other picture. This sort of market is also disappearing nowadays. So at the time, I didn't know that this was going to be like a sort of, historical type image, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. And then this first image, I'd like to talk about the route planning. So this is a time where I actually did plan a route, and I hit it exactly at sunrise, and the result's quite interesting. I have the orange under the bridge is orange, and over the bridge is blue. So it just created a really nice lighting effect, and that's all thanks to visiting this location before and then finding a time to go to it and then execute. So, and at the bottom here is just some car that I thought was cool. So just real quick.
Yeah, sometimes you just think it's fun, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, and I think this is just sort of our consistent thread with everything we do, is the worst photo is the one you never take, right? So, pause, take a moment, and, don't let your life rush you in these moments, right? It's key to make time for yourself to get out and shoot and practice. And one thing I think is kind of a fun story I'll just kind of end with on what Austin was saying about knowing laws. I think the best time that I made a mistake was when I was living in Seoul. I went to hike up a small mountain, and common knowledge would be, don't fly your drone near a military installation, government buildings, all that good stuff. Well, I'm like, okay, this mountain's in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know there was an app. There was an app, but I thought, okay, this mountain's in the middle of nowhere. We should be good. I get to the top, fly my drone for maybe 5 seconds, and I just kind of get this feeling, sometimes just as a photographer, as a videographer, you just kind of get that gut feeling of I shouldn't be flying here. Brought it back, and then sure enough, 10 feet later, I'm walking along, this guy taps me on the shoulder, he says, "Hey, are you drone?" And I said, yes, I am drone. He says, okay, we go now. So me, him, and about 30 soldiers hike down the mountain, pop the drone up, start flying it back and forth because they want to see kind of the flight path I had. Humvees roll up with intelligence officers. They get out, they're deliberating and stuff. And I'm shaking. I'm like, just take my drone, please. I will never fly again. So the guy comes over to me, and I think this is a really good testament to, how kind people can be because, the language barrier was a very real thing, right? I don't speak any Korean. He did his best to speak English for me, and he, for better or worse, basically just said, hey, we've decided you're not North Korean. I said, okay, that's good. We've got that cleared up. That's good. And then he said, we could fine you a bunch of money and do all X, Y, and Z, but, you don't seem like you know that much. And I said, you would be correct, my friend. I know nothing. That's I can live with that. And he said, here's the app. Go on your way. Just use the app moving forwards. And that's really what kind of woke me up to local laws, and whether it's my drone, my camera, always familiarizing myself with that. And I hope none of you have that sort of moment in time where you have to have that learning curve. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. But, it's something that's just... a bad situation could become good, right? And you, as a photographer, will have moments where things do not go according to plan, and you're thinking, man, should I quit photography? Am I doing the right thing? Always give yourself time to process and look back on it, because anything that happens to you can take as a learning opportunity, and that's not a bad thing. And the whole idea of nothing. I got that from someone in Korea as well. One day we were taking photos near this palace, and there was this whole lineup of younger Korean gals, aged probably 12 to 16, holding cardboard cutouts of a guy. Well, I have to know what this is. This is like, why are they all lined up? This is strange. So I walk up to them, I say, hey, why are you holding a cardboard cutout of this guy? I tried to use my very broken Korean to ask her, and in perfect English, she spins the sign around, and she says, no, it's not this. It's got 7. You, no, nothing. And then walked past me. And I looked at her, and in that moment, I said, you know what? You've given me clarity on myself. I know nothing. That's okay. I will learn something, right? Learn something, learn what's going on around you. And if you do that as a street photographer, you'll have a great experience. Anything you want to add, Austin? Closing thoughts?
No, I'm good.
Okay, there we go. Now that we got to share the fun story about how we met. People are always like, how did you guys meet? Dating app. Yeah. Good times. Good times. Can you go to the next slide, Austin? Okay, this is my super unformatted social media plug. If you guys want to follow us on Instagram or YouTube, we're more than happy to answer questions, share our stories. My channel is mostly based around Nikon rumors. I'm kidding, it actually is. But on my channel, I usually talk more about videography, drone flying, rules and regulations in Alberta specifically. On my Instagram, it's mostly Cityscape, things like that. Some of my client work I'll sometimes share. But for the most part, I like to treat it as a community so people can ask questions. People give me ideas sometimes. So, if you guys want to connect offline on there, more than happy. And then Austin's channels are what?
Yep, Austin and Seoul.
Street photography.
You can probably guess where I am as well.
Yeah, we can. Yeah, so his channel, especially on his YouTube channel, is primarily based around film. So if you're a film shooter and you really want to see some cool shots done in communities that way, you can go there. Next slide, Austin. And this is our course. So we do have a photography course we just dropped a couple days ago. It's not a master class. I cannot reiterate this enough. I know there's going to be some guy that's like, oh, well, it should be this. No, it's an energizing course. We basically just go into more detail on what we talked about today. And it's really to just empower you as a photographer to get out and shoot, right? I think at the end of the day, the best thing you can do if you take anything from this course and a time we've spent together is just get out, have some fun, take some photos, and don't overthink it. Have some fun, make lots of mistakes, and again, the worst photo is the one you never get. But thank you all so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I think we'll open up the floor to questions.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Austin, and thanks, Joey. So, Austin, are you in Seoul right now?
I'm in Seoul.
Wow, that's so cool. He was joining us this morning. And thank you all to you that joined in person. We will get you guys to ask some questions shortly. We had comments about your vest. People like your vest on YouTube today.
My fiance picked it.
And actually, you were very good at answering a lot of the questions that came through, so well done. There was one for Austin about what do you do in terms of your color developing for film?
The developing?
Yeah, do you do it yourself?
I do not. I just take it to a lab. So whatever they do, is magic. So.
Excellent. And we do have some film development in Calgary. So there's Paul Stack, and then there's also the Neat Film Lab. So there's some business cards at the front if you're interested in that. But otherwise, yeah, I just want to thank everyone again for joining us online from home, and thanks everyone for being in person this morning. We hope that you enjoyed this talk. If you want to see more, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the notify me, and hopefully we'll catch you again very soon. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, offline questions. Anyone have any offline questions for Austin?